Who's next here? Josh is on 3. Let's see what he has to say. Hey, you're on the air.
Hey guys, thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
First, I'd like to apologize. I hope you don't equate the behavior of people who claim to be Christians with the life of Jesus Christ.
Well, I don't. I know for a fact that all Christians are not as arrogant as our first caller or as just completely way off loopy as our last caller. However, you know, it's a shame that, you know, that is what religious beliefs can do to some people. You know, make it the way they think.
Certainly, certainly. I just want to address a few things.
Certainly.
About the Pope, when his phrase, the mystery of life, I think he was referring to birth control more than just, you know, total supernatural activity. So that was just one interpretation of his phrase. Well, yeah,
that was one thing specifically. He talked about cloning and birth control and like genetic manipulation.
Yeah, so I think that's what he was talking about, mystery of life.
But you know, it's genetic advances in medicine, developing medicines, are going to be the thing that wipes out the Parkinson's disease that he is suffering from the face of the earth. That's what's going to cure Parkinson's. All this research and study into the human genome.
Right, potentially, yeah. I agree with you. You know, him talking about, you know, how science can be bad is totally crazy. But a couple other things I wanted to touch on. You know, the scientific method, we're talking about evolutionary theory. You know, actually the evolutionary theory isn't true scientific method, because the scientific method is observable and repeatable, and obviously you can't do that when you're talking about history, because we can't go back in time to see that it was actually happened. So a theory is different from the actual scientific method.
Yeah, but you know that there are other ways in which evolution has been observed.
Sure, I understand just through that there is microevolution, which we can obviously observe. Yeah. But to talk about, you know, the genesis of things, you know, the actual beginning of things, well, remember, we can't actually use scientific method to talk about those things.
Not to interrupt you real quick, but you know, the evolution actually doesn't. The beginnings of life, okay, is an entirely different field of study. That's a field of study called abiogenesis.
Right.
Evolution simply discusses how there are changes in gene frequency in a species over time.
Sure.
And so that's really
microevolution. We can obviously observe those things.
Yeah.
But
macroevolution too. I mean, macroevolution is really nothing more than microevolution on a larger scale.
Yeah. But the evolutionary theory ultimately says that, you know, we are a cosmic accident. You know, that out of the Big Bang.
Well, so.
And well, I understand, and so if we take that to its logical conclusion, there is no God. We are a cosmic accident, so there is no moral absolutes. And so, how do we determine right and wrong? So, if that's the case,
you must be a new viewer to the show. Because we discuss it's just, this is a topic that it seems like every show we get in on this, and we've discussed this quite at length. I'll tell you how we observe right and wrong. Our species is a social species.
Right. Okay.
And we have to get along. We have to coexist.
Right.
So we determine what is right and wrong by what actions result in consequences that are either favorable or unfavorable to the success of our species as a whole. And the ones that are favorable, we call those right. And the ones that are unfavorable and damaging, we call those wrong. It's simple applied knowledge. There's nothing really magical to it.
So how come people who are smart like y'all don't always do the favorable thing?
Well, you know, because
we don't have perfect information.
Yeah, newsflash, I'm not infallible.
Right.
Okay, you know, I mean, everyone makes mistakes.
Even the information we do know and the right things we do know, we still don't do. There's still that sinful nature that we all have to be honest with ourselves, that we don't always do the right thing, even though we know the right thing to do.
Yeah, but we try, and we. And if you're smart,
but you got to admit, there's a sinful nature that we're dealing with.
I wouldn't call it a sinful nature. I would just say that human beings are learning animals, and in the process of doing that, we often make mistakes.
We're trying to learn we're trying to learn where that proper balance is between me, and living tomorrow.
Right. So. Well, another few things on evolution. The evolutionary theories has evidence, but it's based on certain assumptions.
Okay.
Like carbon-14 dating is reliable. Or that elements break down at a certain rate.
They're two different things, actually. Carbon-14 and something like that would be used to determine how old a wood stump is or something like that.
Right.
It doesn't tell anything about
something is
evolution.
60 million years old, they're using those forms of dating, which may or may not be reliable. You know, we assume that it's reliable. You read the paper and it says something 60 million years old. We assume that dating is reliable, but we don't know if it's true or not.
It's based upon the fact that there are these that the isotopes that are being used in the dating process have a known, what's called a half-life.
Yeah.
That is to say, they break down at a known rate.
Right.
And so
but
that's how you can sort of...
That's assuming that our atmosphere and our world has been the same this whole time.
Well, no, it doesn't, actually. I mean, there are...
well, if the atmosphere and the environment's different, the breakdown is going to be different.
Well, there is... are you familiar... A couple of weeks on the show, we had Alan Glasser on, who was a doctor of plasma physics, and he spoke about something called deterministic chaos, which is a current field of study right now in physics that talks about how even the slightest, the smallest micro level of a change in initial conditions can cause certain results suddenly to be wildly different down the road of an event than they might have been. So there are limits certainly to where we can predict accurately how certain events have transpired or that they will transpire. However, but the point is, sure, there are things that do not allow for absolutely perfectly correct answers all the time.
Right. Well, your list of 10 was real nice, and those list of evidences you gave don't necessarily conflict with the creation theory that God started the Big Bang.
But none of those specific evidences provide actual evidence of that being himself. The question of that being's existence is an entirely different matter.
Right. Well, has anybody told you you're a great man of faith? Because it takes more faith to believe in the evolutionary theory than it does the creation theory, because the chances are so improbable
we hear that all the time.
By chance.
Yeah, we hear that all the time. Well, first off, there's the whole probability argument's specious, because there's no point, debating the mathematical odds of something that's happened. I mean, it's happened, so there it is. But
but the mathematical odds of it happening by chance are
exactly. It's not happening by chance. Chemistry
so what is it? Is it a god?
Chemistry is a pretty precise science. When you put certain chemicals together, they will join up.
But where did those
when you put other ones together, they will not.
Where did those chemicals come from?
Where did your God come from?
Well, he reveals himself very clearly through the Bible and through Jesus.
Okay, so now, right.
Before that.
Of course, we have to go back to the bottom line.
Okay, no, wait a minute. Now, hang on. You're telling me that all of this evidence that I've provided for in terms of Big Bang cosmology and all of the different resources that exist out there supporting evolutionary biology and microbiology and cosmology and physics and all that, you're saying, oh, that's flawed. Oh, there's problems. Oh, you can't rely on that.
No,
but then I ask you about God, and you say, oh, well, it's in the Bible. And
no. You didn't let me finish.
Yeah.
Of course, I have to, finish my remarks in saying that's assuming that the Bible is reliable and that Jesus Christ is reliable.
Sure.
And so I think it doesn't take a whole lot of research. It does take research to understand that the Bible is one of the most reliable sources of antiquity.
Then how do you account for the 4 conflicting resurrection stories?
Well, they complement each other. They don't conflict each other.
I see. I see. So
Martin and Ashley and you and another buddy, we saw the same thing, but if we wrote an essay on it, it would be a little bit different, but we would observe the same thing. It was just, a different, view of the thing.
And so you're willing to go ahead and make this allowance for biblical texts, but you're not willing to say, oh, well, all the different evidences from these different fields of science complement each other. You're not willing to give science the same benefit of the doubt that you're willing to give your biblical
I love science. I love the scientific method. I love physics. I love chemistry. I love mathematics.
But clearly you prefer your Bible story to how everything happened to what science is.
No. Listen, all ideas, not all ideas are equal. And when we're talking about scientific ideas, they are very reliable for the most part. I mean, the ones we can see and observe and are repeatable, like chemistry and physics and mathematics. Obviously, it just makes logical sense. Those are very reliable.
And
now,
we can confirm the findings of evolutionary biology much the same way.
Okay, well, when you're talking about the genesis of things or the history of things, we can't really use the scientific method, so we have to use other ways of testing
of course
to see
we can. Do you know what the scientific method is?
Yes,
okay.
you have an experiment and you observe it, and it's repeatable.
That's kind of an oversimplification. What you have is you start with a hypothesis, okay, and then you begin a process of research and experimentation, as you said, in the effort to what's called falsify Your hypothesis.
No, I stayed awake in class. I know what you're talking about.
So you know what falsification is?
Yes.
Okay, well then we don't have to go through the Reader's Digest version of that.
Right.
Okay.
But again, you have to admit that when we're talking about history, we can't use that method.
Well, why can't we? I mean, but we're not just talking about history,
you have a time machine that we don't have.
Well, wait a minute. Well, okay, but we're not just talking about history, right? I mean, we're talking about other fields like, for example, biology, paleontology, chemistry, physics, quantum physics. It's not just the historical record that is used to determine how, for example, living things evolved. It's not just the historical record. There are, as Ashley pointed out, we know how chemical reactions work.
Right.
And we know how particles in organisms age. We know how speciation works in living things. I mean, there is such a wealth of different fields.
Sure, I agree with you. Those are wonderful things. But I guess my challenge to you guys is I'm assuming you've read the New Testament and you've read the Old Testament, and there's a lot of evidence out there that what we read in the Old Testament is exactly what happened to the Jewish people, that it's a reliable telling of history of what happened to the Jewish people and how God revealed himself through the Jewish people. And then we read in the New Testament how God revealed himself through a man named Jesus Christ, and he lived a perfect life for 33 years, and then he hung and died on a cross for the sin of all humanity, and including
which is a sick and twisted idea, off topic.
Which is creepy. But then what I would like to know what then the additional historical evidence is, the extra biblical evidence is to corroborate what's in the Bible. I mean, there are some things that can be
Josephus, the Jewish historian who talked about Jesus and all the wonderful things he did.
You know, the Testimonium Flavinium is considered a forged passage.
Who are you talking about?
The passage in Josephus that you're referring to, which is called the Testimonium Flavinium, is considered a forged passage.
Well, maybe there's a few scholars
and I'll tell you why.
But the majority of scholars.
Hang on, I'll tell you why. No, it's the general consensus, and I'll tell you why. The passage appears in an area in which it is not supported by any of the contextual passages. Suddenly, this passage in the text pops up talking about Christ.
Well, do you honestly believe that all the good things that Christianity has done, to change our world for better? I mean, how do you talk about all the bad things? You know, you're real quick to mention all the bad things, but what about all the good things, all the schools and the hospitals and the good things that Christianity has done? I mean, the benefits it's done for women, the benefits it's done for children.
There are a lot of good things. Santa Claus can make kids be good in December. That doesn't mean he's real.
Yeah. I mean, we're not denying that.
Well, it certainly gives credence that there is a real living God who's changing people's lives, and those people will change other people's lives for the good.
Drugs and alcohol can change your life.
Yeah. I mean, not any more than it gives credence to the fact that, the idea of Santa Claus makes children behave at Christmas time, so that must give evidence that there really is a Santa Claus making them behave properly. Well, no, not really.
Well, you're right.
Yeah.
But...
So I mean, we appreciate your questions, and we're not trying. I mean, we're trying to answer you hopefully clearly and not disrespectfully.
Yeah, but I have a whole shelf full of books on both sides of the issue of the evolutionary theory and the creation theory, the reliability of the Bible and the New Testament and the life of Jesus. And so, I just want to make sure you guys are reading those good scholarly books as well.
Sure. Well, I mean, I try to read as much as I can get on my hands on
The Case for Faith.
Yeah. Have y'all read The Case for Christ and The Case for Faith?
Yep. I'm in the middle of reading it and reciting it or refuting it pretty much line for line.
These guys are smarter than you and I will ever be. I mean, and they fully believe that Jesus was totally reliable.
Well, I've read some of Ashley's rebuttal to the Case for Faith, and it seems pretty strong. And some of the arguments that I have seen in Strobel's books are pretty specious. I'm not denying that these guys aren't smart guys, but smart people can make extremely specious arguments.
Yeah, and so can atheists too.
We don't deny it, but again, we're looking at what arguments are being made, and we're saying, well, it doesn't make sense because of this reason or that reason or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I say, you can go through any of those books and find either logical problems with it or whatever.
I understand. I see where your point is. If I could make a final comment.
Sure.
That everybody has faith in something. Everybody in the whole world. All 6 billion people woke up this morning for some bottom line motivation. Some people have faith in Buddha or Allah or Jesus. Some people have faith in money or power or cars. Or some people have faith in the altruistic, doing good things for other people like you guys. But everybody's faith is only as good as the object in which they put their trust. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I don't know that
let me keep going real quick.
Yeah.
A person's faith is only as good as the object in which they put their trust. And so you have to determine if that object is reliable. Obviously, money and power and fame and popularity aren't that reliable, and we know that Allah isn't that reliable. We know that Buddha isn't reliable. But really, in my research, the most reliable thing a person can put their faith in is not, the moral good in other people and in ourselves, but that the fact that Jesus Christ really lived and walked this earth, and that he died and came back to life. That, in my research, is the most reliable thing a person can put their faith in. So what all of us need to do is find the most reliable thing we can put our faith in. In my experience of dealing with human relationships, and trusting in the good in other people and trusting the good in myself is not very reliable. So I want to challenge you guys to find something more reliable.
Well, it's gotten me through, and it's been a reliable thing for me. I'm sorry that trusting in the goodness of human nature and of your own nature wasn't a reliable thing for you. I'm sorry to hear that.
Now, do you guys are married and have kids?
I was married for a little while, yeah.
Do you have kids?
I don't. Our producer does.
Okay, I'm waiting for you guys to have kids, okay? This is going to totally change your theories.
Many people in our group do have kids, sometimes multiple generations, lots of kids.
Yeah. Well, you're going to experience firsthand the depravity of mankind, because you don't have to teach a kid how to lie or steal or beat up their brother and sister, okay?
I think we call that immaturity. I wouldn't call it depravity, but I would call it immaturity.
Yeah, we teach them how they have to live with other people.
Yeah. So once again,
I taught them. God didn't.
Yeah. Remember, it's lessons learned, applied knowledge.
I just don't think you guys have a reliable source of how to find a life mate, how to raise a family, and where we go when we die. I want to challenge you guys to find something more reliable.
Well, I go by what I decide what my opinions are on a certain subject, based upon what the validity and the strength of the available evidence is. I don't see any evidence that convinces me that any of the claims made by any of the major world religions, and particularly Christianity, are true. If I were to encounter such evidence, I'd be happy to consider it. As far as what I use to guide myself through life and to be a good person, again, it's proven generally to be, in my experience, if we want to talk about personal experience in these things, fairly reliable.
Well, we know that socially and personally, divorce is not a good thing. So
sure.
Where did it fall short for you?
Well, it fell short for me because my wife and I just went different directions in our lives.
Well, we know that for the good of society, divorce it does no good for our own souls and for society.
Yes, well, according to the most recent figures from a group called Barna Research, which is a Christian polling organization.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, so you know them.
Yeah.
People who are not affiliated with any religion have among the lowest divorce rates in the country. They're like 24%.
Right. Well, that was my other comment I meant to make.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between religion, including Christian denominations, and a true, vital, dynamic relationship with the living God.
Yes,
and you've heard that before, I'm sure, a million times. The difference between religion and relationship. You guys are always talking about religion, but the thing that defines true Christianity is that it is a relationship with the living God.
Yes. Well, we usually find that argument tends to pop up when we mention something really embarrassing or really negative that a particular Christian or group of Christians has done. Other Christians we'll find circle the wagons and say, oh, those guys aren't true Christians. We're the true Christians because we'd never do that.
Well, again, even though God indwells man is still fallen and imperfect, and so he still screws the deal up. But that's what God does all throughout history, is he takes man's screw up and turns something good out of it. God is always in the business, of never giving up on man.
Yeah, I just have a hard time
with the whole thing up.
Science and people have done a pretty good job of turning us around too. It's done a lot. We've come a lot farther by helping each other and by having science help us out than by having religion help us out.
Right.
I mean, religion has done good things for folks.
I still don't like the logical conclusion of, you're trying to help people out, because if there is no God, why would I want to help people out? Why don't I get all the sex and money and power and pleasure I can in the moment?
Because I have to deal with you tomorrow.
Yeah.
If I just pass you up on the highway and you're out there in an accident or a flat tire and just say, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya.
Yeah.
Well, then chances are when I have a flat tire, you're going to do the same thing to me. That kind of sucks.
Yeah. I mean, we have to get along as a species. We talked about this before. It's all about
we got to coexist. As you would have them doing to you. Guess who said that?
Was it Confucius?
A lot of people before Jesus.
The Bible, you can't get away from it.
A lot of people before Jesus in the Bible.
Yeah, the Golden Rule.
Thousands of years before.
Yeah, I know. We got to move on. But the Golden Rule was credited to Confucius 500 years before Christ.
I appreciate you guys' time. You guys are great.
Hey, we love talking to you, but kind of went on, and so we need to get going.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Talk to us later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Do unto others, then split.